He stared at her for a moment, his expression unreadable, before finally sitting down. He picked up a spoon and took a bite, his movements slow and deliberate. Susan watched him carefully, her heart pounding despite herself. As his spoon scraped the bottom of the bowl, she bit back a satisfied grin. Small victories, she thought. Ethan set the spoon down, meeting her gaze with his usual cool detachment. "Don't think this changes anything," he said, his voice low. "Oh, I wouldn't dream of it," Susan replied, her tone light, but her eyes gleaming with defiance. He lowered his gaze to the ground, his thoughts hidden behind a stoic expression. The silence stretched uncomfortably, filling the room with a weight Susan wasn't sure how to break. After finishing his breakfast, he rose from the table and reached for the door. "Are you going to work?" His tone was casual, almost indifferent. "I can drop you off at the subway station." The question caught Susan off guard, her fork clinking softly against her plate. She hesitated before shaking her head, the motion slow and uncertain. "I was fired," she admitted, her voice low and tinged with desolation. The words hung in the air, fragile and heavy. Ethan paused mid-step, his hand resting on the doorframe. His brow furrowed slightly, the faint crease on his forehead betraying his surprise. He had been under the impression that she worked at her family's company. The tension between her and the Drew family seemed deeper than he had initially thought. "All right," he said after a moment, his tone even but firm. "Then focus on cooking at home." Susan blinked, her jaw tightening at his dismissive response. "Cooking? As if that's all I'm good for." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she forced herself to smile. "I'm planning to look for another job," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "But don't worry, I won't let it get in the way of cooking at home." "Whatever," he muttered, brushing past her and out the door. The soft click of the door echoed in the quiet house, leaving Susan alone with her thoughts. She let out a sigh, her shoulders slumping as frustration bubbled beneath her calm exterior. For all his charm, or lack thereof, Ethan had a talent for making her feel insignificant. Over the next few days, Susan threw herself into the task of job hunting, her determination acting as a shield against the lingering sting of Ethan's indifference. Her laptop became her constant companion, the glow of the screen reflecting in her tired eyes as she scrolled through endless job postings. Fashion design and architecture-related roles filled her search results, each promising opportunities to talented professionals. But every time she considered submitting her resume, a familiar pang of doubt crept in. She couldn't risk exposing her background as the young lady of the Drew family. Keeping her previous professional experience a secret was no easy task. The shadow of her family's name loomed over her, and even smaller companies seemed wary of hiring someone with her last name. To make matters worse, the larger corporations she applied to only offered her assistant-level positions. Despite her skills and credentials, her age seemed to work against her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the room in shades of orange and gold, Susan's eyes landed on a listing for a small company called ICM Design. It wasn't flashy or prestigious, but the job description piqued her interest. The role would allow her to showcase her creativity without the suffocating expectations that came with a major corporation. She chewed on her bottom lip, debating whether to apply. It wasn't what she had envisioned, but it was a start, an opportunity to rebuild herself away from her family's influence. With a decisive click, she submitted her application. The faint hum of her laptop filled the silence, a small but satisfying sound that marked the beginning of her new chapter. As she leaned back in her chair, a quiet determination settled over her. She wasn't going to let her circumstances define her. This was her chance to take control of her life, one small step at a time. The next day, Susan officially started at ICM Design. The office was modest, barely more than 100 square feet, with mismatched furniture and a faint smell of coffee lingering in the air. The walls, lined with sample swatches and pinned sketches, gave the place a scrappy but earnest vibe. The team was small, just 2 designers who seemed to juggle everything from drafting layouts to handing out advertising leaflets on the street. Susan had been handed a stack of brightly colored flyers that morning, their edges slightly curled from being hastily printed. "This is where we start," one of the designers had said with a sheepish grin. "Get your name out there, right?" Susan nodded, her fingers tightening around the stack. The task was far from glamorous, and she couldn't help but feel a pang of self-consciousness as she stepped outside. The bustling street seemed almost indifferent to her presence, the crowd flowing around her like she was a rock in a stream. Each rejection chipped away at her confidence. Her arms grew heavy from holding the flyers, and the heat of the unusually warm fall day pressed against her like an unwelcome companion. The sun bore down relentlessly, beads of sweat trickling down her back and dampening the collar of her shirt. Her cheeks flushed a deep pink, not just from the heat, but from the sting of being ignored. She wiped her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a faint smudge of ink from the flyers on her skin. "Just a few more," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of the city. Another person brushed past her without so much as a glance, the corner of her flyer bending under their careless stride. Susan sighed, adjusting her grip on the remaining stack. She was beginning to wonder if she should just pack it up for the day when a low, throaty engine purred nearby. A sleek black Lamborghini eased to a stop in front of her, its glossy surface gleaming under the sunlight. The sudden presence of such a luxurious car in this unassuming part of town caught her off guard. Susan blinked, momentarily mesmerized by the stark contrast between her mundane task and the extravagant vehicle before her. Her stomach tightened as the driver's window rolled down. Her breath hitched. It was Jacob.
To listen to the full audio series, install the Pocket FM app now.